I'm Joey Yamada, and this is my presentation on digital safety and education. So, what kind of threats are there out there? Well, for one, there's malware, and that's the most common one where you see a link and you're like, oh, I got to download this thing. You download it, and suddenly it takes over your computer, starts sharing all your information, your password, your credit card information to whoever just hacked you. The other one is phishing, which phishing is more of a technique. It's where you get those fake emails and it's kind of weird, but it's pressuring you like, hey, the police are coming. You gotta do this. You gotta click on this link in order to make everything okay. And that's because they're trying to pressure you in without thinking about it, like that you need to download this thing. And once they get that, they can hijack your computer and therefore all your information. Then send from your account to everyone else you know about something you sent, like pretending to be you, like, hey, you should click on this link, look at all these pictures, um, which people fall for a lot. Then what else is there? So there's companies. Well, companies aren't inherently a threat to your privacy online. Um, they all like they all tend to gather a lot of your information. Some of them will sell them, but if any of them are hacked, they will lose your information to anyone who hacked, which means it's not really safe with them all the time. And we've seen this many times in the last few years. So how serious is it? According to ZDNet and other sources I used, the estimate from about all of them comes out to be about like 45% of the time users submit their information into a phishing website rather than an actual website. And that's pretty scary considering that means they're throwing away all their information and they have no idea. In 2018, 64% of organizations experienced malware activity that spread from one employer to another or employee to another. So the way this works is someone, like one of the employees gets an email and it pretends to be from a higher up saying, hey, you got this meeting, you click on this link, I have all the details here. And so in a panic to make sure they don't get fired, they click on it and they're like, okay, then it hijacks their account. It sends similar emails from them to the people who work below them, and suddenly it's from one employee to another. Everyone has it in the entire company, and that's just a pain and a ton of money to get out. Not to mention all the information that they can then leak from any of the customers who are using that company. Um, so in a survey of our class, only one person said that they actually read the specifics and the terms of use. And if you really pay attention to those things, they can have a lot about, oh, hey, we have the right to all your information. We can sell them to other companies, that kind of thing. Ad companies so they know what they can send you. Um, so it's really everywhere. So who can we hold responsible for this? Well, there are three main groups that can help us fix like our cybersecurity crisis, as I call it. So companies, 53% of those businesses report themselves to be understaffed in cybersecurity. Considering how important the information a lot of them store, it's fascinating to me that 53% of them think that they don't have enough people in security, but they still haven't hired them. Otherwise, there's schools. So schools, while not inherently making us lose our information, aren't exactly helping us when they can. So only about 42,000 schools in the US actually teach computer science, and much less teach computer safety and usage, which means that there's a whole bunch of schools that don't have any computer courses or anything that can help you learn how to be better equipped in the digital world. Out of our class, 72% didn't know how to check running applications. While this isn't necessarily embarrassing, uh, running applications are important because it shows you everything that's running on your computer. So that could be like, for instance, Google or something, to a malware that you might have downloaded, and you can identify it by checking your running application. So it'll say something weird, it'll be some weird text file. Um, it might even have like some kind of symbol. Probably your antivirus will catch it, but it's good to know to check it. It's also widely joked about that there are many teachers from K through 12 and even sometimes college that don't know how to use technology, which I feel should be a regulation. The government, so they have the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, who tries to track down these kinds of things, phishing websites, but they should invest more in better education experience with tech in both schools and business as a regulation. So then, rather than having to catch them after they steal information, you educate the people so they don't fall for that kind of thing. All right, so businesses. Uh, so corporations leak information all the time, and we've seen this happen many times in the past 10 years. For instance, Facebook data breach was really big and was on the news, everything. The testimony was really interesting, but we'll get back to that later. Um, According to Dmitry Aplerovich of McAfee, which is a antivirus software, spear phishing, which is the social engineering through email. So it's what I was talking about earlier, where it's sent from one employee to the next employee, and suddenly they have control of everyone's account in the entire company. One of the most common tactics hackers use in business. And so this can be avoided if you just, educate your workers a little bit about these kinds of threats. Schools. So according to a survey of our class, 73% said their high school didn't even offer classes or on computers or the internet, and 22% weren't even sure if they had any, showing how little it's promoted and how there's no emphasis really put on this kind of stuff. My high school was lucky enough to have someone who was very tech savvy and both a programmer with a knowledge of computer engineering and a background of digital design. And while this sounds good, about twice a week he would actually have to go out of class to go help another teacher to fix whatever they were doing, which is usually user error and they mess something up. Um, I think schools need to put more funding into the technological frontier, whether that be more instructors that know the ins and outs of technology, or just educating their staff on how to better use technology and to make sure they don't fall for these kinds of scams. The government. So, in the Mark Zuckerberg testimony, which we were talking about earlier, Facebook, when it had its data breach, Congress had no idea what they were asking Zuckerberg. And what I mean by that is the first one of the questions they were asked was, if Facebook doesn't charge people for their service, how do they make money? To which Zuckerberg replied, we run ads. And anyone who's used Facebook before knows that ads are lined up wherever they can put them, so long as they're not like directly in your line of sight. And that's because that's the only way they can make money. Um, Now, we beat up on the government a lot for a bunch of things sometimes, but considering that our country can be determined as mostly technologically illiterate when we have access to tech everywhere is pretty sad. So, SDDs. You might wonder, what do SDDs have to do with computers? Well, they don't have anything to do with them, unless you're the 12% of people who took a test about STDs in the United States who thought HTML was an STD. Yikes. So, counter arguments in conclusion. So, here are a few examples of things that people say prevent us from having this sort of regulation. So, many say that enforcing learning computers and the internet would cost us a ton of money from the government. And while that's true, we actually lose $445 billion annually to hackers, which is a number that continues to climb as we integrate it with more, as we integrate our lives with more technology. And I don't know about you, but I would rather pay my money to the government, which pays it to schools and businesses, than the money all to hackers who just get stuff for their own benefit. Um, the other thing is that we don't need it. It's not urgent. Technology isn't everywhere yet. Well, there's a law in computer science called Moore's Law. And what it states is that the speed and capability of computers can be expected to double every 2 years as a result of increases in the number of transistors a microchip can contain. So what does that in English? That means that basically, as technology changes, every 2 years, it gets twice as fast and can get smaller and better in pretty much every way. We see this all the time. Now we have laptops that are way smaller than the original laptops. We have phones that are tiny. We have digital screens, everything, right? Um, so if you think about that and the rate at which we're already going, if you told people 20 years ago that we'd have wireless earpods and wristwatches that can track our heart rate and all this other kind of stuff, connect to our phone wirelessly, it'd be crazy to them. They'd think that's so cool. Well, think from now to 20 years into the future. Even now, as I sit here, there's an Amazon Alexa on the table about 5 feet from me that's probably listening to whatever I say, but it's been integrated into tons of households by now. Anyways, it's just something to think about when we're talking about the digital frontier and how important that kind of safety is for us. So, in conclusion, I think that the government should spend more money on regulations about who teaches to make sure at least that they learn or have someone teaching them how to use technology to make sure they don't fall victim to these kinds of things. And also students to make sure that when they grow up, they're ready for this digital world that approaches them when they're finding a job, finding all of these kinds of things. And then employees who sometimes sabotage their own company and therefore any of the customers using their programs by accident because they're just not well informed on these kinds of threats that exist out there. So, with all of that in mind, hopefully we can create a safer digital place for everyone. All right, thank you for listening.